September 17th, 1862. The sun rises over the rolling hills of western Maryland, casting long shadows across cornfields that will soon become America's bloodiest killing ground. In 12 hours, more Americans will fall than on any other single day in the nation's history. This is Antietam. This is where brothers will face brothers in a battle so savage, so relentless, that the very concept of war in America will be forever transformed. The stage is set along Antietam Creek, near the town of Sharpsburg. Confederate General Robert E. Lee has made a bold gamble, pushing his army of Northern Virginia into Union territory. His goals are clear: threaten Washington, draw the Union Army into a decisive engagement, and perhaps, just perhaps, win recognition from European powers that could turn the tide of the war. But Lee's army is divided, his forces scattered across Maryland in a risky maneuver that has left him vulnerable. Union General George McClellan, cautious by nature but emboldened by incredible luck, has discovered Lee's battle plans wrapped around 3 cigars, left behind by a careless Confederate officer. McClellan knows exactly where Lee's forces are, and he's moving to crush them. As dawn breaks, Lee has consolidated about 38,000 men along a defensive line that stretches for roughly 4 miles. They're outnumbered nearly 2 to 1. McClellan commands approximately 75,000 troops, the Army of the Potomac, the largest fighting force ever assembled on the North American continent. The Union general has every advantage: superior numbers, knowledge of enemy positions, and high ground for artillery. But McClellan, ever the perfectionist, ever the hesitant commander, will squander these advantages through caution and piecemeal attacks that will turn a potential strategic victory into a tactical stalemate bought with rivers of blood. The battlefield itself is deceptively peaceful in these early morning hours. Cornfields stand tall, their stalks heavy with late summer growth. A small white church belonging to the German Baptist Brethren, known as Dunkers, sits quietly on a slight rise. A sunken farm road cuts through the landscape, worn down by years of wagon traffic. A stone bridge crosses Antietam Creek on the southern end of the field. Within hours, each of these ordinary landmarks will have names that echo through history: the Cornfield, the Dunker Church, Bloody Lane, Burnside's Bridge. Places of peace will become synonyms for slaughter. The soldiers on both sides are tired, hungry, many are sick. Lee's Confederates have been marching hard, living off the land, their uniforms in tatters, many without shoes. They're veterans, though, hardened by battle, led by officers who have proven themselves time and again. The Union troops are better equipped, better fed, but many are green, untested in the crucible of combat. They don't know what's coming. Neither side does. No one in America has ever experienced anything like what's about to unfold. The attack begins at first light. Union General Joseph Hooker's First Corps moves forward through the northern cornfield, 8,600 men advancing in neat lines toward Confederate positions held by Stonewall Jackson's divisions. The corn is tall, over 6 feet high in places, thick enough that men can't see more than a few yards ahead. It's perfect cover for an ambush, and Jackson's men are waiting. The first volleys tear through the stalks like a scythe, cutting down Union soldiers who never see their killers. Men fall in rows as if struck down by an invisible hand. The survivors push forward, returning fire blindly into the corn, the smoke from thousands of muskets mixing with morning mist to create a fog of war that's suffocatingly literal. For the next 3 hours, the cornfield becomes hell on earth. It changes hands 15 times. 15 times one side charges forward, drives back the enemy, only to be hit by a counterattack and forced to retreat. Artillery from both sides pounds the field, canister shot turning stalks and men into pulp. A Confederate officer will later write that the corn is cut down as cleanly as if harvested by farmers, except the harvest is flesh and bone. Union reinforcements pour in. General Joseph Mansfield's 12th Corps, 7,200 fresh troops. But Mansfield himself is shot within minutes, mortally wounded while trying to correct what he thinks are his own men firing in the wrong direction. They're not his men, they're Confederates, and they're firing exactly where they intend to. By 9 in the morning, the cornfield is unrecognizable. The stalks are gone, trampled and shredded. The ground is carpeted with bodies. Union blue and Confederate gray and butternut mixed together in death. Over 8,000 men have been killed or wounded in this single field. Survivors on both sides are running low on ammunition, physically exhausted, psychologically shattered. The fighting here begins to die down, not because either side has won, but because there's simply no one left with the strength to continue. The Union has failed to break through. Lee's left flank holds, but barely, reinforced at critical moments by troops pulled from other parts of his line. A dangerous game of constantly shifting his limited forces to meet each new threat. But McClellan's plan, such as it is, calls for sequential attacks, not simultaneous pressure across the entire line. This gives Lee the precious time he needs to shuffle his chess pieces. As the cornfield falls silent, the killing shifts southward to the center of the Confederate line, to that sunken road where several brigades of Southern infantry have taken position. It's an excellent defensive position, a natural trench that gives them cover, while providing clear fields of fire across the farmland in front of them. Union General William French's division, 5,700 men, approaches at noon, having gotten lost earlier in the morning and stumbled into this sector almost by accident. French's men advance across open ground toward the sunken road, marching in parade ground formations that would look magnificent on a parade field, but are suicidal here. Confederate troops under General D.H. Hill wait until the Union soldiers are less than 100 yards away, then unleash devastating volleys that drop entire ranks. The Union soldiers keep coming, stepping over their fallen comrades, loading and firing as they advance. But the mathematics of the situation are brutally simple. Men advancing across open ground cannot win against entrenched infantry with clear sight lines. French's division is shredded, losing 1,750 men in less than an hour. But more Union troops are coming. General Israel Richardson's division moves up, 4,000 more men feeding into the meat grinder. Richardson is more tactical than French. He maneuvers his brigades to get enfilade fire, positioning troops where they can shoot down the length of the sunken road rather than straight into it. It's a killer stroke. Confederates who had been safe behind their earthen parapet are suddenly exposed to fire raking along their trench. Men fall in heaps. The road that had been their fortress becomes their tomb. Some Confederates receive a garbled order to retreat, others hear nothing and stay, creating chaos in their ranks. Union troops sense the confusion and press forward with renewed fury. Hand-to-hand fighting breaks out in the road itself, men clubbing each other with rifle butts, stabbing with bayonets, too close even for pistols. By 1 in the afternoon, the sunken road belongs to the Union, but the cost has been catastrophic on both sides. Over 5,000 men have fallen in this sector alone. The road is so packed with Confederate dead that a man could walk its length without touching the ground, stepping only on corpses. A Union officer who sees it will name it Bloody Lane, and that name will stick in every history book written about this day. Richardson himself is mortally wounded by a shell fragment, dying a painful death 6 weeks later. The center of Lee's line has been broken. A huge gap exists in the Confederate defenses. McClellan has 20,000 fresh troops in reserve, men who haven't fired a shot all day. One decisive push here right now could split Lee's army in two, destroy it completely, potentially end the war. But McClellan doesn't know what he has. He believes Confederate reinforcements are everywhere, phantom divisions conjured by his own anxiety. He holds his reserves back. The moment passes. Lee frantically pulls together fragments of units, walking wounded, anyone who can hold a rifle, and plugs the gap. The center stabilizes. While thousands die in the cornfield and at Bloody Lane, the southern end of the battlefield has been strangely quiet. A single stone bridge crosses Antietam Creek there, and Union General Ambrose Burnside has been ordered to take it and sweep up the Confederate right flank. It should be straightforward. Burnside has 12,500 men. The bridge is defended by perhaps 400 Georgia riflemen under General Robert Toombs, positioned on high ground overlooking the crossing. But that bridge is a perfect choke point. Only a few men can cross at a time, and Georgia sharpshooters pick them off with terrifying accuracy. Burnside sends regiment after regiment straight at the bridge in frontal assaults that accomplish nothing but adding bodies to the creek. For 3 hours, he batters away at this single crossing point, seemingly unaware that Antietam Creek is shallow enough in several places that his men could simply wade across. His subordinates suggest this. He ignores them, fixated on the bridge like a man obsessed. Finally, at 1 in the afternoon, the 51st New York and 51st Pennsylvania managed to rush the bridge in a desperate charge, overwhelming the Georgia defenders through sheer numbers and courage. Burnside has his crossing, but he's wasted 3 precious hours and hundreds of lives taking a position he could have bypassed. Now Burnside must reorganize his forces on the western side of the creek, bring up ammunition, prepare for the advance. More time bleeds away. It's 3 in the afternoon before his troops finally move forward toward Sharpsburg. If they break through, they'll cut Lee's line of retreat to the Potomac River. The Army of Northern Virginia will be trapped, destroyed. Lee watches from a hilltop as the blue tide rolls toward his collapsing right flank. He has nothing left to stop them. Every reserve has been committed. His army is about to be annihilated. And then, at the last possible moment, salvation appears on the southern horizon. A.P. Hill's Light Division, 3,000 men who have force-marched 17 miles from Harper's Ferry, still wearing captured Union blue uniforms in many cases, slams into Burnside's exposed left flank. The timing is cinematically perfect, the kind of last-second rescue that would seem contrived in fiction, but actually happened. Hill's men are exhausted from their march, but they attack with desperate fury, knowing their army depends on them. Burnside's advance, already tentative, staggers under this unexpected blow. Union commanders, confused by the blue uniforms, hesitate for critical seconds. That hesitation becomes retreat. By nightfall, Burnside has been pushed back almost to the bridge he spent all morning capturing. The Union's last chance to destroy Lee's army evaporates in the fading light. As darkness falls on September 17th, the battlefield grows quiet except for the cries of wounded men calling for water, for their mothers, for death to end their suffering. Both armies are shattered. Lee has lost over 10,000 men, nearly a quarter of his force. McClellan has lost over 12,000, though his much larger army can absorb the losses more easily. The total butcher's bill, 23,000 Americans killed, wounded, or missing in 12 hours of fighting. It's a number that defies comprehension. More casualties than the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, and the Mexican-American War combined. More American casualties than D-Day will produce 82 years in the future. The single bloodiest day in American military history, a record that still stands. Lee's army should retreat. Any rational assessment of the situation demands it. His forces are mauled, low on ammunition, trapped against the Potomac River with a victorious enemy army in front of them. But Lee doesn't retreat, not immediately. He keeps his army in position throughout September 18th, daring McClellan to attack again, demonstrating a defiance that borders on madness but cements his legend. McClellan, despite having 20,000 fresh troops who never entered the battle, despite having reinforcements arriving hourly, refuses to attack. He's convinced himself that Lee's army outnumbers his own, a delusion that will cost him his command 2 months later. On the night of September 18th, Lee finally withdraws across the Potomac back into Virginia. His Maryland campaign has failed. His army has survived, but the aura of Confederate invincibility has been shattered. The tactical result of Antietam is a draw, a blood-soaked stalemate where both sides can claim they held their ground. But strategically, it's a Union victory, and the consequences will reshape the war and the nation. Lee's invasion has been turned back. European powers, particularly Britain and France, who had been edging toward recognizing the Confederacy, step back from the brink. They will not back a losing cause, and after Antietam, the Confederacy looks like it might lose. More importantly, President Abraham Lincoln has been waiting for a military victory, any victory to make a move he's been planning for months. 5 days after Antietam, on September 22nd, Lincoln issues the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. Effective January 1, 1863, all slaves in rebel-held territory will be declared free. This transforms the war. What began as a conflict to preserve the Union becomes a war to end slavery. It ensures that European powers cannot support the Confederacy without implicitly supporting slavery, a political impossibility for nations that have already abolished the institution. It gives the Union a moral cause that transcends politics and borders, and it opens the door for nearly 200,000 black men, to enlist in Union forces, bringing fresh strength to Northern armies and draining the South's labor force. None of this happens without Antietam. The battle doesn't end the war, but it makes ending slavery possible. And in doing so, it gives the war meaning that will echo through generations. The photographers arrive at Antietam 2 days after the battle. Alexander Gardner and his assistants from Matthew Brady's studio set up their cameras and capture images that shock the nation. Americans have never seen photographs of war dead before. The images are displayed in Brady's New York gallery, and crowds line up to see them, to confront the reality of war stripped of its romance and glory. The New York Times writes that Brady has brought the bodies and laid them on our doorsteps. The age of sanitized, glorified warfare is over. America has seen the true face of battle, and its corpses bloating in the sun, the detritus of violence laid bare. For the soldiers who survive Antietam, the psychological scars run as deep as the physical wounds. They've seen industrial-scale killing, the kind of warfare that won't be seen again until the trenches of World War I. Many never fully recover. They'll wake screaming from nightmares for the rest of their lives, seeing again the cornfield soaked in blood, hearing the cries of wounded men in the darkness. The Civil War will grind on for 2.5 more years, producing battles with higher total casualties, but none will match the concentrated horror of Antietam's single day. September 17, 1862 stands as a monument to human courage and human folly, to the terrible price of a nation divided against itself. 23,000 casualties in 12 hours, a creek running red, a cornfield harvested with lead, a sunken road transformed into an open grave, and from this carnage, improbably, the seeds of emancipation and a reunited nation. This is Antietam. This is America's bloodiest day.